You know what's strange? Nobody notices when you start pulling away. Not at first. The change is so small that even you don't realize it's happening. You stop replying instantly. You leave a little earlier than usual. You spend more time in your room. You stop volunteering information about your life. You stop explaining yourself. And then one day, somebody looks at you and says, "You've changed." What they don't understand is that you didn't change overnight. You got tired. Tired of conversations that went nowhere. Tired of pretending to care about things you never cared about. Tired of feeling more alone around people than you ever felt by yourself. That's usually where solitude begins. Not with loneliness, with disappointment. Because the truth is, you tried. You tried harder than most people realize. You went to the parties. You joined the groups. You sat through the dinners. You answered the messages. You kept showing up, even when every part of you wanted to leave. And for a while, you convinced yourself that eventually it would feel natural. That eventually you'd find your people. That eventually you'd feel what everyone else seemed to feel. But something never clicked. You would sit in a room full of people and feel completely disconnected from what was happening around you. Everyone was talking. Everyone was laughing. Everyone seemed engaged. And all you could think was, is this really it? Not because you thought you were better than anyone, because you genuinely felt like something was missing. Nobody talks about that feeling. The feeling of looking around a crowded room and realizing you're surrounded by people but starving for connection. The feeling of listening to a conversation for 20 minutes and not hearing a single thing you'll remember tomorrow. The feeling of spending an entire evening socializing and leaving with absolutely nothing inside you. Most people think loneliness comes from being alone, but some of the loneliest moments happen in a crowd. That's what confused you. You weren't lonely when you were sitting by yourself. You were lonely when you realized nobody around you was talking about anything that mattered to you. You were lonely when you couldn't say what you actually thought because you already knew how people would react. You were lonely when you realized that being understood is much rarer than being surrounded. At some point, you stopped trying so hard. Not out of anger, out of exhaustion. You stopped forcing conversations. You stopped chasing invitations. You stopped trying to make every friendship work. You stopped shrinking parts of yourself just to make other people comfortable. And something unexpected happened. You felt lighter. For years, you assumed the goal was to fit in. Then one day you started asking a different question. What if fitting in was never the goal? What if the reason you always felt uncomfortable wasn't because there was something wrong with you? What if you were trying to force yourself into places that were never meant for you? That question changes everything. Because suddenly your entire life starts making sense. The reason certain friendships felt draining. The reason certain environments felt unbearable. The reason some conversations felt like work. You weren't broken. You were incompatible with things that required you to become someone else. Think about how much energy people spend performing. Smiling when they're irritated. Agreeing when they disagree. Laughing when nothing is funny. Pretending to be interested. Pretending not to be hurt. Pretending not to care. Pretending to be someone they're not. Most people become so accustomed to the performance that they stop noticing it. You noticed it, and once you notice it, it's impossible to unsee. You start realizing that many relationships survive because both people agree to ignore what's real. You start realizing that honesty makes people uncomfortable. You start realizing that authenticity is rare. Not because people are bad, because most people are terrified of being seen clearly. And maybe that's why solitude started feeling different. It wasn't emptiness. It was relief. Relief from performing. Relief from explaining. Relief from constantly adjusting yourself. For the first time all day you could just exist. No audience. No expectations. No social script to follow. Just silence. And in that silence, something surprising happened. You started hearing your own thoughts again. Not the opinions of your friends. Not the expectations of your family. Not the endless noise of the internet. Your thoughts, your voice, your instincts, the parts of yourself that got drowned out whenever too many people were around. That's why solitude became important. Not because you hate people, not because you're antisocial, because it's one of the few places where you can hear yourself think. The world will tell you that's unhealthy. The world will tell you that happiness is found in constant activity, constant connection, constant socializing. But your own experience tells a different story. You've felt exhausted after spending hours around people. You've felt peaceful sitting alone with your thoughts. You've felt invisible in a crowd and completely understood by yourself. That's not a flaw. That's information. It's your life showing you what actually nourishes you and what merely occupies your time. The older you get, the more you realize something uncomfortable. A lot of people don't miss you. They miss access to you. They miss your attention, your availability, your willingness to listen. And when you stop offering those things so freely, they assume you've changed. Maybe you have. Maybe you've finally stopped giving your energy away without asking what you're getting in return. Maybe you've stopped confusing attention with connection. Maybe you've stopped confusing familiarity with understanding. Maybe you've stopped confusing noise with belonging. And that's why solitude no longer scares you. Because solitude isn't the absence of people. It's the absence of everything that was pulling you away from yourself. So if you've spent years wondering why you never fully fit in, why certain rooms always felt wrong, why being alone often feels better than being surrounded, stop assuming there's something wrong with you. Maybe the real problem was spending years trying to belong in places that only accepted the version of you that wasn't real. And maybe the reason solitude feels so peaceful isn't because you've given up on people. Maybe it's because, for the first time in your life, you've stopped giving up on yourself.